Okay, Lynn. Lynn, you have to unmute.
There we go. Let me share my screen here so you guys can follow along. Bear with me 1 second. There we go. Are we good? I think we're good. Yeah. All right, awesome. As Ellen said, I am Lynn Edris. For those of you who don't know me, I am a productivity and ADHD coach and co-host of the ADHD Support Talk podcast, which is actually the longest running ADHD podcast on air. I'm also a woman with ADHD myself, guys, so I totally get it. I have 2 kids, one of whom is a young man with ADHD. So I have been where my clients are, and I often say I've come out the other side, which is not to say that I learned how to cure ADHD or that I don't struggle with ADHD anymore. It really is about learning to live well with your ADHD and having those days when ADHD kind of wins be the exception, not the rule. So I want every single one of you to have more success and more fulfillment than you dreamed possible in your lives at one point as well. You can learn more about me and what I do on my website. It's www.coachingadvantages.com. I am a productivity and ADHD coach, but my goal is not to help you just learn to cross more stuff off some list each day. Okay, so tonight I'm going to share with you my keys to consistent productivity, and I'm going to help you get to the root of your struggles once and for all. And I want to talk for a little bit, but I really like to have you guys kind of work along with me a little bit. So grab something to write with. If you don't have something to write with and on now, grab something and have something handy, because I do like you to kind of work along with me, and I'd love to engage you guys as much as I can. I was saying before we started the presentation that I hate being like a talking head. So this is much more fun for me if you guys are working along with me. So right out of the gate, I want you to think about the last few weeks you've had. I want you to think about a couple of things, like think about, just pick 1 to 3 things you've been putting off or not taking care of that would improve your quality of life if you did them. And I want you to think about why they matter to you deep down in terms of your values and who you are and what you want out of life and all of that sort of coachy stuff. And then just think about a few things that have gotten in the way of you doing those things. So it's just 1 to 3 things you're not doing that would improve your life, why each one matters, and what gets in the way of you doing each of those things. So jot them down for yourself, put them in chat for me, but hold on to them because we're going to come back to them in a bit with some practical application, okay? Because I am all about practical. So I want to give you guys a little bit of context to help make sure we're kind of all on the same page, all right? Like I said, I've been doing this for, well, it's more than 17 years now, and I have worked with thousands of people who have come to me for help, and the top 2 complaints are always consistent. Number 2, the most common complaint is something about poor follow through or procrastination, something about not showing up in the way that you intend, right? That's the second most common complaint among my clients. The most common complaint of all the people who come to me for help is something about feeling like they're not living up to their potential consistently. So of the thousands of people I've worked with from all over the globe, no matter where they're from, what they do, all walks of life, the number 1 most common complaint, regardless of what specifically they've come to me for help with, is feeling like they're not living up to their potential. So the problems we have with productivity and time management are much, much bigger and much, much more life altering than just doing more. Okay. And that's what this is really all about. It's about you showing up as you intend to, you showing up as the person you really are deep down inside. All right. Really deep down. It's about your actions being consistent with your intentions and your values. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Does this resonate with you guys? Is this something that you guys struggle with, that you guys worry about? Is this something that you guys feel as well? So it's really about you showing up as who you really are. When I first started my business years ago, The tagline on my homepage of my website was, let me help you put your performance in sync with your potential. That's really what this is all about. So if it could be, let me put your performance in sync with your potential and your intentions, I mean, that would really, in a nutshell, describe what it is that I want to do for everyone I work with. That's what's at the root of everything, no matter what specifically you want to do or achieve. I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. I can't see too many of your faces, but I hope you're getting it, right? And if you're here, odds are pretty good that you know what I'm talking about, right? And you know what it feels like when you fall short. It's that gut feeling, that kind of punch in the gut, not in the pit of your stomach feeling that you get when you don't show up in the way you want to show up, when you have that that it's really like a gut-wrenching feeling of remorse kind of in the core of your being when your behavior doesn't show up in a way that matches your values, when you drop the ball again, when you let someone down again, when you let yourself down again. Do you guys know what I mean? Put I get it or something like that in the chat so that I know you're, this is resonating with you. But that's really the ultimate problem that we want to fix, right? So the real problem is always bigger and deeper than any forgotten to do or any missed appointment or even bigger than not showing up to pick up your kids on time, right? It's bigger than showing up for meetings unprepared. It's much bigger than having a to-do list that only gets longer every single day. Because when your performance is out of sync with your potential and out of sync with your intentions, that disconnect is where the pain is for my clients. And that takes a toll over time. Over time, you stop trusting yourself. And over time, you stop believing in your capabilities. You stop believing in what you're really capable of doing and what's really possible for you. It's painful. I mean, I'm getting some thumbs up. Yes, when I let others and myself down, I totally get it. Absolutely. Got a thumbs up. Yes, here for my son and husband who struggle with ADHD, Anastasia says. So this is the thing that really breaks my heart. This is what I'm so passionate about solving in my business. And when I talk to new clients, the thing that really breaks my heart the most is that pain that I know they feel, that pain that I remember so well. And I can really dork out on this stuff because it is so personal for me, right? That pain of always feeling like I was underperforming. I remember that very, very well. No matter how hard I tried, no matter what I did, I always felt like eventually I fell short. Sure, I would have glimmers of time when things would, feel like they were really starting to come together, but it always seemed to fall apart eventually. So I worked longer and harder, and I would push and I would grind and I would sacrifice just to keep my head above water. I remember it very well, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I hear about it every single day from my clients. But here's the deal, guys. It really doesn't have to be so hard. These are all things that you can learn. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with your work ethic. There's nothing wrong with your self-discipline. There's nothing wrong with who you are deep down. These are all things that you can learn to do differently, and it's all very fixable. I see it every single day. So I really want to get you guys moving in that direction tonight. All right. Let's see here. There we go. So the first thing that I want you guys to know is that, as I started to say a little bit before, although I am a productivity coach, my job is not about helping you just do more and cross more crap off some list every day, right? So improving productivity is really actually not about output. So my job is to help you learn to follow through, show up as the person you intend to be more easily and more consistently, with more time and more energy left over for the things that really matter most to you. So that's at the root of everything I do, because true productivity is about creating freedom and fulfillment. Free time and free energy for the things that matter most to you personally, and the kind of fulfillment you get when you know that you're performing at the level of your abilities consistently and showing up as the person you really are deep down. All right. That's what this is all about. Again, it's not about output. So we create that freedom and fulfillment, not just by doing more, not just by managing our time better. We do it by learning to allocate what I call your 3 most precious resources. And we learn to allocate those 3 resources more effectively and efficiently. This is really about, it's more than productivity. It's about more than time management. It's really about resource allocation. So your 3 precious resources are your time, your energy, and your focus or attention. And sometimes I'll substitute the word bandwidth for focus or attention. So it's really all about intentionality and thoughtfulness in allocating those 3 precious resources in a way that is aligned with our values and what we want out of life in mind. Okay. So again, I'm going to like beat this to death. What's that expression? Beat it like a dead horse. It's not about getting more done. It's about getting the right stuff done more easily and more quickly so that we are managing those 3 precious resources more effectively and efficiently, and having more of them left over for the things that really matter to us and our quality of life. You guys getting this? I hope so. So the way we allocate those resources more effectively and efficiently is actually pretty complex, right? Productivity is pretty complex. And that's one of the first things I want to help my clients see, because most people come to me, and you guys may have come to this presentation looking for a single solution, looking for a system, looking for a skill, okay? Where true productivity, the kind of productivity that I want to help you create, the kind that brings freedom and fulfillment, is not a single thing. It's not a skill, and it's not a system. Okay. Understanding that is huge for starters. So being truly productive in a way that brings you freedom and fulfillment requires a complex set of systems and tools and behaviors that all need to come together to support you. They need to fit you and your strengths and your tendencies and your actual real life, and they all need to work together. I often say they need to work together like gears in a machine. So it's much more complex than people realize, but it's not necessarily hard. But there are many gears in this so-called productivity machine, and we must make sure each gear is working well in conjunction with the other gears so that they can all support us in creating the life we want to live. So I call these fundamental elements of productivity the pillars of productivity. So I'm going to give you a real quick sort of high-level overview of these essential elements, the pillars. And I want you to think about those 1 to 3 things that I asked you to jot down, those 1 to 3 things that you're not following through on, that you hopefully put in chat for me. And I want you to think about how they relate to the reasons you said you're not doing these things. So think about your reasons why you're not following through, or what's getting in the way of you doing these things, and how these pillars of productivity that I'm going to share with you are related. Okay. Hopefully this will all kind of come together for you. Hang on 1 sec. Trying not to slurp into my microphone. So the pillars of productivity that I have here on your screen, this is a conceptual model that I developed after well more than a decade of working with adults like you guys to help them understand those fundamental elements of productivity that all must solidly work together for you to be able to follow through and show up like you intend, like the person you really are deep down. And again, I call them your pillars of productivity. Sorry, guys, if I gave you a little motion sickness there, but your 5 pillars are: number 1 is your calendar. Number 2 is task management. Number 3 is planning. Number 4, I call routines, habits, and rhythms. Sometimes I'll call this pillar personal automations, and I'll explain why. And then number 5 is your perspective. So pillar 1, you need a calendar that you can trust to manage your commitments and give you a map of your time. Okay. We all need that. Your brain isn't meant to manage all of that. That's number 1. Number 2 is task management. Task management is the most complex of the pillars. We need a system or a set of, sort of subsystems, perhaps for some people, to manage all the things that we need and want to do. Okay. This includes like one-time things, those one-time, one-off things that pop up for us that are, truly tasks, one-time tasks, to projects, to long-term projects, to goals, and even managing our ideas and the things we might want to explore someday. So we need a system that we can trust to manage these things if we ever want to execute them. Okay, so that's task management. Task management, again, it's more complex than the other pillars because it has so many layers to it. So again, pillar 1 is calendar, pillar 2 is task management, and pillar 3 is planning. And I can almost feel the groans or hear the groans as I talk about planning, because I know that's not a word that a lot of my clients love, right? But planning is simply giving yourself direction. Okay, it's like setting the GPS for your days. If you're not planning, you're reacting. So you need a simple process for planning that makes it easier for you to execute what you plan. And to plan effectively, the first 2 pillars, your calendar and your task management, really need to be solid because they come together for planning. I often say, like, planning is the sum of your calendar and your task management. You have to take both of those into consideration in order for you to set a plan for yourself, in order for you to set that GPS for your days and have that map, that roadmap for your time. Okay, so that's number 3, planning. Number 4 is your routines, habits, and rhythms. Okay, I sometimes call this pillar personal automations because a lot of my clients really don't like the notion or the words habits and routines. So I will call them rhythms, or I will call them personal automations. But everything you create a rhythm or a habit or a routine for happens more easily. It literally takes less brain power, literally burns less glucose in your brain when something is happening on autopilot. Okay, so you don't have to manage those things in your systems and tools. They don't have to live in your other pillars, right? They happen on an autopilot, and they take less effort, they take less time, less energy, and less focus to execute. So they're real-time energy and focus savers right out of the gate. Okay, so that's pillar 4, routines, habits, and rhythms. Pillar 5 is, I call, your perspective. And really, pillar 5 is more like the foundation of the other pillars. When I was developing this model, I'm thinking there are 4 pillars and a foundation, but that's not like a real catchy name for a model, right? So we'll call them the 5 pillars of productivity. But when I'm talking about your perspective, I'm talking about your thinking. I'm talking about your beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about your challenges, the way you think about how you work, how you think about the things you need to do and want to do, and even your beliefs and how you think about time. All of those things that comprise your perspective need to be working for you on your behalf. Okay. So again, the 5 pillars are your calendar, your task management, your planning, routines, and your perspective. So that's a real quick kind of high level overview of what I call my pillars of productivity. And if you have questions, hang on to them. I'll answer them later, and I'll talk more about some of the pillars as we go along. But what's really important to know is that all 5 pillars need to be solid and set up to work for you, and they need to work together, again, like gears in a machine. So if any one of these 5 pillars is shaky, they won't support you. The others can't support you. So when they're shaky, you're not following through in the way that you intend. You're not showing up as the person you really are deep down. You're reactive. You're putting out fires. You're letting your inbox drive your days, right? When they're solid, you're proactive rather than reactive. You're prepared. You're following through on what you intend when you intend to. You're reliable to others and to yourself, right? You end your days feeling more satisfied, feeling gratified, feeling fulfilled, with time and energy to spare, right? With that time, energy, and bandwidth left over for the things and the people that matter to you, including you, right? So getting all your pillars working for you is actually much less difficult, I think, than my clients think when we start to untangle them and address them. And I'll share complementary tools, like we talked about a little bit ago, that I'm giving you guys when we get closer to the end of this, so that you can untangle your own pillars. So I don't want you to get distracted now. So hang in here with me now. I'll share that link with you when we get closer to the end before I do the Q&A. And I believe they said they'll send the link out with the replay as well. Setting your pillars up to work for you, all 5 of them, has to be practical, okay? They have to work in the real world, in your real life, right? This isn't theory. This is a conceptual model, but setting up your pillars is something that has to be done in practical real life ways, all right? They have to be set up in ways that are natural for you. So based on how you process information, how you organize things naturally, how your energy sort of ebbs and flows throughout the course of the day, and how your focus ebbs and flows throughout the course of the day. And even those little things we think of as like idiosyncrasies and quirks to how we work are all things that are natural tendencies that we need to take into consideration when we're setting up our pillars, okay? So setting up our pillars based on what's natural and how we work best is how we make it easier to sustain them so that they can support us. And that's where so many of my clients, like many of you guys, have really struggled because they're trying to plug themselves into some system out of the box or somebody else's way of doing things. And those things are rarely sustainable for us. Sometimes we get lucky and we hit on something that is either by coincidence or maybe we picked up on it by intuition, that it has some components that are natural to us that are easier to sustain. But I know you guys have tried some pretty great sounding strategies, and systems that were not sustainable for you guys. Tips and tricks and hacks that you hear from people all the time, but we can't make those things last for the long haul. Most of my clients have, they've left a trail behind them of partially used planners and apps that rarely see the light of day, right? We all do. That's pretty typical ADHD stuff until we really get in touch with what works for us naturally. So it's not your fault that that stuff didn't work for you. It's not because you lack self-discipline or willpower or determination or any of those things, right? You just haven't learned how to do things in ways that are natural for you and work with how you really work best. So again, I'm going to share a link for a quiz in a little bit that I created to help you get to the bottom of your struggles with productivity and, figure out which pillars are solid for you and where to focus your efforts so that you can find solutions that actually address the problems that you're having. So I before I do that, I want to clarify a few things a little more, and I want to take a look at kind of the difference between the pillars, if that makes any sense. So if you take a look at the first 4 pillars, your calendar, task management, planning, and routines, right? Those are all what I call external supports for your productivity. So we need these external solutions like a calendar and task management and planning and routines and those kinds of things, that practical, tactical stuff. We need that stuff to address the executive function challenges that come with our ADHD brain wiring, right? So that we can be productive and we can follow through. So the first 4 pillars are those external solutions that support things like focus and memory and organization and time blindness. All right. So all of our executive function related challenges that are connected to our productivity are solved or supported with external solutions, systems, tools, and behaviors. Again, the practical, tactical stuff. And we need, again, to make sure that those first 4 pillars are customized to work for you so that they can actually make your life easier, right? That's the whole point of them, is to support you like scaffolding. So the first 4 are external solutions, but the fifth pillar, your perspective, is really the most important pillar of all. The pillar is an internal element that requires internal solutions in order to support you. It really is the foundation of all of it. So I'm talking about, again, your mindset, your thinking, and what I call what's going on between your ears with respect to how you see yourself, how you see your challenges, time, the things you need to do and want to do. And for some of my clients, really for the vast majority of my clients, it's a pretty tough nut to crack, right? So your perspective and your thinking, your perspective is your keys to your consistent productivity. No matter how solid the other pillars are, no matter how well you're managing your calendar, no matter what great task management system you have in place, no matter how great your process is for planning or your routines are, you're never really going to be able to show up as the person you really are deep down consistently, show up in the way that you intend if what's going on between your ears is getting in your way. Okay, just about every single client who comes to me for help has developed some kind of some patterns of behavior that are rooted in how they think about themselves and the things they need to do. So again, I'm talking about those between the ears things, and those things are really the things that show up like procrastination and avoidance and overwhelm and fear. And I'll talk more specifically about those particular challenges in a couple of minutes, but those are all challenges that are rooted in your perspective, in your thinking, and in your beliefs. So it's really important that we distinguish or differentiate between the first four pillars that support our executive functions with external supports, right? And those internal solutions that we need, because those external solutions are not going to solve internal problems and vice versa. I almost said it backwards, vice versa. Are you guys getting this? Are you, what's that expression? Picking up what I'm putting down or whatever? I'll check chat in just a minute to see what you guys wrote down in terms of what's getting in your way of doing the things that you want and intend to do, because we really do want to look at that practically in terms of these pillars and in terms of your obstacles specifically so that we can solve them. And if you haven't shared yours yet, or you popped in late, go ahead and put in the chat something, 1 to 3 things max, something you're not doing that would improve your quality of life if you did it. And tell me what gets in the way of you doing that thing. Okay, that's really important. So we can take a look at them together. We can see what kinds of solutions you need to turn that around. All right, I'll check chat in just a couple of minutes. It's really important to understand that in order to be effective for the long haul, the solution must address the underlying root problems. Taking Advil may take the edge off the pain when you have a broken bone, but it's not going to fix the bone, right? And poor Teddy needs more than a few Band-Aids to put him back together. So many of my clients, like I did, continue to play what I call planner roulette, right? And then have planner shame because they're not using the planners they think are going to solve all their problems. We spend a small fortune, that's probably an understatement, and an untold amount of time trying to find the magic solutions for our problems, those external solutions, and never having them stick. So we really need to get to the root problem. We need to get to the real underlying root problem so that we can solve it. Otherwise, you're throwing superficial solutions that are never going to help you for the long haul. Okay, so again, we got to get to the bottom of the real underlying root cause of what's getting in your way if you want to solve it for good. Like my client, Jenny, she's a great example. Jenny is a pretty high-level sales executive in a tech firm. So she came to me for help with getting her work done more efficiently so that she could get her life back and get her relationships back on track and start taking care of herself, something I hear a lot about from my clients. So when she came to work with me, her first 4 pillars were in pretty good shape. They were pretty solidly supporting her. She was dedicated in using her calendar. She had a solid task management system set up. So she was able to plan her days like a champ, right? She walked into work most days having clear direction for herself, knowing what she needed to do and what she wanted to do, and having a simple plan that she was able to execute. But there were still those nagging things that kept showing up in her to-do list and kind of hanging out and hanging over her head all the time, kind of like a dark cloud, right? I always think of who was it? Piglet from Winnie the Pooh had that kind of, the cloud. Is it Piglet? Who am I thinking of? Oh no, totally wrong cartoon.
Eeyore.
I'm thinking of Charlie Brown. Eeyore is gloomy old Eeyore. Yes, I'm thinking of Pigpen and Charlie Brown. I'm kind of mixing my cartoons. But they hang over your head, right? It's like a dark cloud that follows you around, right? So Jenny was, she had her systems and her tools in good place, but she was still staying late at work. She was still overworking, taking work home. She was fried, she was frazzled. And she actually came to me because her she was starting to feel like she was a BI you know what at home. By the time she got home, she was done, right? And she said, I'm just a BI you know what on wheels by the time I get home. I've got nothing left for anybody else, which means that she has nothing else for herself either, right? So she was starting to wonder if she was really capable of handling the workload she had been given in the job she was hired to do. So she was starting to doubt herself. She was starting to question what she was really capable of, and starting to wonder whether she was going to start to have to look for another job, even though she loved what she was doing for the most part. And I know that probably sounds familiar to quite a few of you. But what we uncovered was the root of Jenny's productivity challenges really were not in her systems and tools. It wasn't so much about, like, those systems and tools and strategies and that's practical, tactical stuff, right? It was really about what was going on between her ears. Okay. So the underlying problems she had were in how she was thinking about the things that she needed to do, and how she was thinking about herself, and how she was thinking about her time, and all of those things that so many of us struggle with. So we really needed to solve those deeper underlying problems that were rooted between her ears so that all of the other pillars could support her properly. One of the things she talked about was making sales calls. She needed to make, certain outbound calls, and she needed to do some consistent reporting for her team that she was struggling with. And that stuff just kind of hung over her head. And I know a lot of us with ADHD struggle with phone calls of all different kinds of all different types. And that sort of administrative minutia kind of stuff tends to be the stuff that we struggle with. So I worked with her on the strategies I teach my clients and in the Get It Done group to change the thinking patterns she developed over time with respect to the sales calls themselves, with respect to herself and her time and the other things that she needed to do, so that she was able to get those things out of the way, get those things done and get on with her day, and help her team do the same, right? So she could get her reports in on time without her boss having to come look for her, and get home at a decent time with plenty of energy and bandwidth left over for her family and the rest of her life and herself. And what really made the difference was that we addressed that internal stuff, right? So I want to take a look and see what's been getting in your way. Okay, those things that you identified, which of the pillars you need to address so that you can have the freedom and the fulfillment you want. All right, so I'm going to check chat. I want to see what you guys said your obstacles were to those things that you want to get done. So let's see here. Let me see here. Work night and day to catch up. Sophia's, yeah, absolutely can't spend time with my kids. Joni, exercise, making dinner instead of ordering out. I lose time during the day and I run out of time. Oh, how many times have we heard that? Yes, absolutely. Let me see here. Violetta says, making my bed. I get overwhelmed by looking at the mess and the time it would take, even if it's a few minutes, to walk around the bed to fix it. It feels like it takes too much of my time away. That sounds very familiar. I think probably everybody can resonate with that, whether it's making the bed or emptying the dishwasher or the myriad other things that come up for us. Let's see here. I think it says Sanford. I'm a Mr. Mom and struggle with structuring my time, schedule, routines, etc. Let me see. Joni also says, I capture my to-dos in my calendar and then drag them along day to day as I don't get them done. There's just never enough time. So I guess planning is the challenge. So, all right, good stuff. Thanks for sharing that stuff with me. So one of the things, or a few of the things, almost every single one of you, I'm trying to think if there are any exceptions to this from what I just saw in the chat. And I'm not sure, I think every single one of you, this will relate to. So I want to talk about a really common obstacle that is a little more sneaky for some of my clients, and then I'll check chat again, and then I'll answer whatever questions you guys have. So hang on, my slide's not switching. There we go. So looking at what you guys shared in chat, I'm seeing what I expected to see and what I always see with my clients for the most part. And one of the things that gets in the way of productivity and execution and follow through for the vast majority of clients is some sort of avoidance. And a lot of my clients don't really realize that that's what it is until we dig a little bit deeper. So I often say there are many different faces of avoidance, but they all come from the same root problem. And they all end up with the same ultimate cost, with that ultimate cost being not living up to your potential consistently and showing up as the person you really are deep down. They also cost us because we tend to overwork to make up for it. Overwork, putting in more time, staying up later. You guys know the drill because most of you are living the drill, and I'm pretty sure of that, and I've been there myself. So there is a really like overt kind of avoidance that most of us call procrastination, right? This is the really obvious stuff. Like when you look at something and go, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that, or I can't do that now. I'm going to go look at YouTube. I'm going to go buy something on Amazon. I'm going to go turn on the TV. That overt stuff is really easy to identify. So that overt stuff that is avoidance, that is procrastination, is like on this far end of the continuum. Then kind of more toward the middle, there's overwhelm, which a lot of my clients don't identify as a form of avoidance until we start to dig at it. So overwhelm is, again, another form of avoidance that is slightly less obvious because it is so fuzzy, so nebulous for so many of us. So overwhelm has become like a blanket term that many of us use anytime we feel stuck, anytime we feel shut down, anytime we feel unmotivated or unclear, or we can't easily do something. We say that we're overwhelmed. The bottom line is that it leads you to avoid doing whatever that thing is. So overwhelm is another kind of avoidance. But the sneakiest kind of avoidance, way down here on this end of the continuum, I'm hitting my mic, is it's the one that is the most problematic for many of my clients, and that's what I call productive avoidance. So productive avoidance, I heard a little bit of that, I think, kind of in the undertones of what some of you guys shared in the chat. It's the sneakiest because it kind of masks itself as an external problem or a volume problem, right? So many of my clients just will say, I have too much to do. I have like stuff just kept coming in and there's not enough hours in the day. Anytime a client says there's not enough hours in the day, then we're going to start digging, right? So it masks itself as an external problem, but it really is a form of avoidance when we can look at it a little bit more closely and a little bit more deeply. So if you are unclear about what's really getting in the way of you doing those things you wrote down, this might give you a little bit of a different way to look at it and a little bit of a different perspective. So I always like to use examples and stories because I think it's just easier to understand when you're hearing about something that is actually real life. So I had a client, I'll call Sharon, like so many of my clients, saying she was overwhelmed. So she was telling me that she's making herself crazy, stressing out about this event she has coming up for her business. And she just can't seem to get it moving forward. And the underlying stress just kind of hanging over her head of not moving this thing forward was really kind of creeping in a real practical way to the rest of her life, right? So she said she couldn't get it moving forward. And when we started to dig at it with her, and really start to kind of get to the root of what's going on with her. Initially, she said, I just have so much going on. I have so much to do. I just can't seem to get around to it. I just can't seem to find enough hours in the day. So on the surface, it seemed like she really had a volume issue in her commitments and in what was on her plate, just too much on her plate overall. And she was lamenting about her troubles with prioritization and not being able to delegate. And those are all problems with more external systems type process oriented kinds of solutions, right? That's those first four pillars. But when we started to dig a little bit deeper, we looked at what she was doing, to make sure those external solutions were supporting her systems and her tools. So she said she was planning clearly, she was blocking time in her calendar to work on the event, but was never able to do the work at that time because other things kept popping up. So when I hear a client say other things keep coming up, that sends bells and whistles off for me. All right. It's like ding, 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 ding. You know, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it clearly now. And you guys can, some of you guys are really going to be able to relate to this. So we started doing what I call a situational autopsy to see what's going on and really get to that root cause so we could find a solution that would help her for the long haul. So looking at just the day before, I said, like, really think back to what happened when you got to the time slot, the block that you had for yourself in your calendar to work on that event. What happened? And she said, I saw it and I thought, you know, that's going to take a while. So I'd better check my email quick before I jump in. She said, then I spent half the time I had blocked out putting other people's fires out. Okay. And by the time I was done putting out fires and dealing with my email, I knew I didn't have enough time left to make any real progress. So I crossed off some other stuff from my to-do list. Does this sound familiar to any of you guys? Tell me in the chat, like, that's me. I get it. I hear you. Yes. Been there, done that, something like that. Let me know that this is resonating with you, because this is something I hear all the time. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be your email. It can be anything that you allow to pull you off track. There is a running joke in my house, and there has been for years. If you see mom with a duster, or if you see mom with a Mr. Clean magic eraser or something like that, send her back to her office because she's avoiding something. So if you see mom cleaning or organizing, send her back to her office. Does that sound familiar to you guys? It could be anything: cleaning off your desk, organizing your office, planning can be a productive avoidance, right? Anything else you notice that needs to be taken care of around the house or at work, something else on your to-do list that suddenly feels more pressing at the moment. That's productive avoidance. And again, it's sneaky because it masquerades as productivity, right? And we get that dopamine boost. We get that feel good reinforcement when we do it because we're getting stuff done. But the reality is, it's not what you intended to do. It's not the stuff that really is going to bring value to your life. And it's a form of avoidance nonetheless. Is this making sense? This is so important. No matter how this shows up for you guys, your struggle with overwhelm, your struggle with procrastination, poor follow through, avoidance, whatever you want to call it, those are all just misdirected coping mechanisms. It's a defense mechanism that has turned into a habit over time. So here's what I mean. Avoidance of any kind, avoidance, overwhelm, procrastination, fear, they're all rooted in your thinking. They are all like feelings that are a direct response to some sort of thinking. Okay, so they are feelings of discomfort that come from your thinking. And that avoidance, that overwhelm, that procrastination is a direct response to those feelings. So your brain is wired to protect you from discomfort. All right, it's just human nature. So you bump up against something, or you come up against something, or you see something on your list that you need to do, and maybe you're a little unclear on how to get started, or it feels big, or it feels like too much, or you feel afraid for some reason, or you feel dread because you know it's going to be boring, right? So for whatever reason, you have an uncomfortable feeling, so you avoid it. You go do something else, anything else. And for a moment, just a split second, in that instant, you have relief. So for a moment, that avoidance works. And whatever that uncomfortable feeling was, it's gone or it's lessened in the moment. And even though you know consciously, and you might even think like consciously about, that you're going to suffer down the road, or maybe even have an internal dialogue with yourself about the negative consequences that come from, what's going to happen when you delay or postpone or avoid the thing, you still do it because for a nanosecond, for an instant, it alleviates that feeling of discomfort in some way. So your avoidance feels like it has a bigger benefit or reward in the moment. And in the moment, that benefit feels stronger and has a bigger pull than any future consequences that you're not really feeling yet. All right. And the relief is temporary, but with ADHD, we're all about in the moment. And it's the relief you know how to give yourself in the moment because it's tried and true. So you feel that benefit of the relief very quickly. So it works. And over time, it just becomes a habit. It becomes a well-ingrained pattern, a habit of responding to that uncomfortable feeling. That's it. It's a way of working that we need to unlearn. Okay, it's not some deep moral character flaw. There's nothing wrong with you. They're just habits that have developed over time as a way for you to deal with uncomfortable feelings that started from your thinking. And the really good news is that you can learn different patterns. All right. Again, I want you to hear this. If you leave this, webinar with nothing else, I want you to hear that there's nothing wrong with you. If you struggle with overwhelm or procrastination or avoidance, that has nothing to do with your self-discipline. It has nothing to do with your work ethic or your moral character. It's not about who you are as a person. It's about what's going on between your ears and the habits you've developed because of that thinking. And again, these are all things that you can learn to change in really practical ways. And once you make those changes, it's like flipping a switch, right? It gets easier and easier and easier all the time to do the things that you intend, to follow through, to show up as the person that you really are deep down, and have more free time and energy for the things and the people that matter most to you. Of course, it's one piece of it, but it's a foundational piece that you need to understand to start to solve the problem. So again, it's a complex problem with complex solutions, but there are very practical solutions to addressing what's going on between your ears. Okay, I'm giving you some high level stuff and some foundations here today, but I hope that what I'm showing you and what I'm sharing with you is starting to help you shift how you think about productivity. It's so important that you see those elements of productivity independently and you start to untangle what's getting in your way. So that you can learn to shore up those pillars of productivity in ways that work for you, learn to do things in ways that are easier for you, and just make life easier in general. That's really what this is about. It's about making it easier for you to show up as the person that you really are deep down. So I have a complimentary pillars of productivity quiz, and you can get a personalized report that will identify your strengths, identify your challenges, and then you'll get customized recommendations to help you get more done in less time. And I know the link is on the next slide. If you hang on with me, it is www, and we'll put this in, if somebody could put it in chat, that'd be great, but it will go out with the replay. It's www.coachingaddvantages.com. So it's coaching advantages with 2 D's, little play on words, coachingaddvantages.com/Bergen Chad. So BERGENCHADD. All right. So that is your quiz that will, that will help you identify which of the pillars you need to shore up and give you some strategies to help you make those improvements. So I want to look at chat and then I want to answer any questions you guys might have. So hang on one second. Let me look at chat real quick and see what you guys shared and what resonated with you. And then I will take whatever questions you have. Let me see. Thank you, Joni. Joni shared the link in chat. Oh, Sophia, that makes my heart hurt. Sophia said, I eat lunch as I work. I'm in tears all the time. I think so many of us have been there, right? Sanford said, yes, very much. I'm an expert avoider. Isabel, so true. Sophia, residents, families, everyone. I'm on call 24/7 daily. So you guys are getting it. Sophia says, I'm constantly getting calls. People in my office can't just focus on my stuff. Andrea says, yes, this is totally resonating. You are right on the money. So familiar, Joni says. Sophia says, I get anxiety. I start to do other things until I can finally start my work. So many of us have that struggle, right? So many of us have that struggle. Who is this? Joni says, productive procrastination queen. Absolutely, absolutely. So some questions we have. What's the most important thing about a calendar? Oh, that is a good question. And every single time I even mention calendars in a webinar on a presentation, somebody asks me, like, what's the best calendar? What's the right calendar? What kind of calendar should I be using? And the most important thing about a calendar, any calendar, is the behaviors with which you use it. So really quickly, there are 3 essential behaviors to having a calendar support you. And it really doesn't matter what kind of calendar you use once you have those behaviors down. Once you get the behaviors down, then the rest of it is just a matter of preference. So the 3 most important behaviors for a calendar are your capture, your retrieval, and your trust. So by capture, I mean every single thing that is a time-specific commitment, every appointment, every meeting, anything that happens at a specific time needs to be captured in your calendar like religiously. You cannot try to remember it. You shouldn't try to remember it. Why bother? Put it in your calendar and let your brain off the hook and let your brain focus on what it needs to focus on in the moment. So that capture is really important. The second behavior is the retrieval. If you are solidly capturing things in your calendar, but you're not in the habit of going back and checking your calendar to retrieve that stuff on a very regular basis, then basically your calendar becomes where your commitments go to die, right? And that's not the point of the calendar. So capture and trust, and then capture, retrieval, and then trust. So the third one is trust. So when you are capturing consistently and you're retrieving things consistently, you're going to have more trust in your calendar. If you don't trust your calendar to support you, like it's like an external hard drive for your brain, then it's not going to support you. If you can't find your calendar when you need it, it's not going to support you. So those 3 behaviors are what really matters about any calendar. And once you get those 3 behaviors down, really focused on that capture, the retrieval, and the trust, then you can really look at like preferences and convenience. So you can play with different formats and things like that. And the rest of it really doesn't matter. It really then becomes a matter of preference, and any calendar will support you. They're the same 3 behaviors that are essential for your task management. Okay, so again, task management is how you manage all the things you need and want to do. Everything from one-time things you need to do, one-time tasks, one-time things that pop up, to bigger projects, to long-term projects, to goals, to ideas, and even like things you may want to explore or look into someday. You need a system to manage all of that stuff that you can trust. You need to capture stuff religiously and consistently. You need to retrieve it so that you know what to do when it needs to be done, and you need to be able to trust it and lean on it. Okay, so task management has a lot of layers and is the most complex. I literally spend weeks and months on task management with my clients, my private clients, and in my groups. All right, so task management is layery, kind of a little bit more layered and complex, but those 3 behaviors apply to your task management as well. So Joni says, how does task management mesh with the calendar? So that's a good question. So I'm trying to think. In order to give yourself direction, to know what you're going to do, and to be proactive, you need to be able to look at your calendar and your to-do list together, your task management system together, so that you can decide, what you're going to accomplish with respect to what's on your calendar. So your planning takes into consideration both your calendar and your task management. They have to mesh together in order for you to plan your days and be proactive. So Bob asks, where does the to-do list come in? A to-do list is a part of task management. So it's an element of task management. Sanford asks, oops, I scrolled too fast. Is there any evidence that handwritten planners are better than digital? I think I lost trust in my Google Calendar. So I can't go too deep into this. But again, that personal, what's the word I'm looking for? That personalization piece is really important here. So for some of us, we get a lot of benefit by handwriting, right? It fills a need for tactical processing. It fills kind of our tendency, our strength for different kinds of processing that we need to honor. So there can be different elements of all your different pillars that are either electronic, either digital or handwritten, or both, right? So we really need to customize that to take that into consideration. Sanford says, he's lost trust in his Google Calendar. So one of the things I often remind my clients, and again, I can't go too deep into this. I literally have a whole 90-day program that's about setting up the pillars. And it really could be 6 months, because some of this stuff, is complex, because you really want to set it up based on how you work best. But a planner and a calendar don't necessarily have to be the same thing. So your calendar is like a time map. Your calendar is an accounting of all of your commitments and responsibilities that are time specific, where a planner is often more than a calendar. It takes into consideration planning as well, if that makes any sense. But there are a lot of things that can make us lose trust in a calendar. So making sure that the capture and the retrieval pieces are really strong, and that you're focusing on those behaviors. And then you can see, like, what is it that I'm not trusting? What's going on here? You can look at it a little bit more of a granular level. Can you give an example of a person deficient in task management? Gosh, that's complex. But if you've got multiple lists, and you have to look a million different places to know, what's going on, or to be able to find your to-dos, if you have to do an archaeological dig to find your to-dos and to make sure that you're on top of things, then you've got task management problems. If you have to look at 5 different places, to make sure that you're on top of the things that you need and want to do, then you've got a task management problem. I'm trying to think of other examples. I mean, if you take that quiz, it'll tell you whether task management is the underlying problem. Most of the clients who come to me for help with that real specific stuff, like task management, or like, help with a planner or whatever, what's really going on is stuff between their ears that's getting in the way of them being able to implement their task management and to be able to implement the planner. So that is, more often than not, it has more to do with that between the ears stuff than the actual systems. And then once we get the between the ears stuff working on your behalf, it's so much easier to look at the systems more analytically and look at the tools more analytically, and make sure that, we're adjusting where we need to adjust without blame and shame and beating ourselves up, and that planner shame that so many of us have when a tool or a system starts to get shaky or wonky or less reliable for us. Absolutely. Any other questions? I'm looking in the chat. I don't see anything else. Any other questions? Questions on whether, I'm not asking this well. Hang on a second, guys. Let me formulate. Like, what kind of solution, or what kind, the root cause of your problem with doing the thing that you want to do. Joni says, regarding procrastination, I learned that waiting for motivation is a killer. Right. The doing usually comes before the motivation. And when I can remember that, I have a better chance of getting started and getting past the lack of desire to get started. Right. With ADHD, we have a deficiency in how we process dopamine. So it's harder for us to manufacture feelings of motivation and inspiration than it is the rest of the world, right? That's harder for us than it is for everybody else, for things that aren't intrinsically stimulating. So until you learn to work without motivation, that's always going to be a struggle, because that's all about that between the ears stuff. Absolutely. All right. I don't see any other questions. You guys had great questions for me. I know there's so much more to this, guys. There really is. I'm not sure what happened in my last slide, but it is what it is. There it is. You guys need to remember that the perspective pillar is almost always the underlying root cause of what gets in the way with productivity, right? It's the bedrock of the rest. I can't stress this enough. It's no amount of strategies and systems and tips and tricks and YouTube videos are going to help you in the long run if you don't get what's going on between your ears working on your behalf. If you don't get that in the right place, you're going to end up right back where you are, right now, tired, overwhelmed, overworked, and unfulfilled. So that's a crucial part of the work that we do in coaching. And this is where we start with our clients first, that between the ears piece. Your perspective is that important. So I often say lasting change must start on the inside. So if you're here, you're probably struggling with poor follow through and performance and feeling like you're not living up to your potential, but it really doesn't have to be that way. You can learn to solve your challenges with your perspective. You can learn to address what's going on between your ears that's keeping you from performing at the level of your abilities with greater ease so that you can have more time and energy for the things that matter most to you. So I hope I gave you guys a good start today and a different way to look at your productivity and your challenges. I hope you'll take that quiz to get you some personalized recommendations to get you moving in a better direction, because you really can learn to take control of your days and perform at the level of your abilities more easily so that you have more of those three precious resources I talked about: more time, more energy, and more focus for the things that matter most to you, and to take care of yourself, right? That's what I want for each and every one of you. So I'd be honored to support you. And if you have questions about any of my groups or my services, please feel free to contact me. Check out my website. You can contact my team through my website. It's www.coachingadvantages.com, and we'll make sure you get what you need. So thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you being here with me. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Joni, for inviting me. I hope you found it helpful.
This was great. Thank you so much. And so much to think about, all that stuff in between. Yeah. If anybody has any questions for Lynn after we're over, you can write to her at coachingadvantages.com. She can tell you more about her Get It Done group, which sounds interesting as well. And we hope you'll come back in the future. Maybe we can talk more about, the underlying perspective, how we can change our thinking.
Definitely.
Right.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
So full disclosure, I've taken Lynn's classes and they're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
They're
so
really
sweet.
amazing. They really
That's
are.
so sweet. Thank you so much. I love that. That makes my heart warm. I appreciate it.
And a game changer for me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. And we hope to see you at one of our support groups or at next month's speaker series. Take care. Have a good evening.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Lynn.
Bye.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Nice
I can
to
see you're hurting.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Aw.
I had to go off for a little bit, but this was
Oh.
great. This was great. You're really talking about the work of self-reflection and thinking about thinking and how our thinking gets in the way. And
Absolutely. We need to change those thinking patterns, and we really can.
all right, I'm gonna
Awesome.
turn off
Thanks
the
so much,
recording.
Lynn.
Nice having you, Lynn.
Everybody.
Thank